Thank you, Damian. Thank you for the invitation. Good morning, everybody. It is a real pleasure to be back here at MediaMorfosis. I was here some years ago, and it was a fascinating experience. I was lucky to join the team to Sao Paulo, where we could share experiences, seeing that beyond the specifics of each region, there's a common intention or a common device, which again, localized, shares the spirit of transformation technologies developed affecting the media world. Transmedia is just being born to reflection, at least. And then investment policies will arise. But philosophically speaking, it creates various conflicts, let alone in production terms. Here in Argentina, I was part of a project called Mentira la Verdad, that was for the channel called Encuentro. And this was a transmedia example because 90% of this project was seen and circulated outside the regular TV screen. A lot of work has resulted from the circulation of this project on the various media. We have seen after 52 emissions that most of them had been intervened. That is to say, they have been edited, cut, joined to other proposals. So Transmedia generates something which Foucault already mentioned, like a loss of authorship. And beyond the intellectual property rights it creates, which in itself is complicated enough, technology allows for an unprecedented change in technology, and we are just about to see where it's heading. It is interesting because I get to open this meeting from the perspective of philosophy. And you know that per se philosophy is not optimistic or useful for that matter. If you think, what does philosophy have to do with a project for entrepreneurs? Nothing, because philosophy questions the background, the foundations of that project. And if from there you go back to the same project from the proposals of philosophy, most likely some decisions will change and then some interesting changes will occur. But the problem with philosophy is that it is not linear. You cannot resort to philosophy to find responses because it does not solve problems. Philosophy creates problems, and it does where everything works well. So it strikes a good operation, but not as if it were apocalypse. No, it quarrels with them, trying to evidence or bring to light hidden devices, but not from the conspirational theory. But it tries to render visible what is invisible, in an attempt to understand that whenever there is light, there is darkness. So when you shed light onto something, it is good to see the boundaries of that area. So we can also give the shadows. The thing is that we don't want to bring those shadows to light, or we have not trained our sight to see that. We have just seen a part of these examples. I noted 5 of them. We are gathered here at an event channeling radicalization of technology, and PowerPoint was just not working. and the microphone ran low on batteries. So you can see that all this makes part not of the hypertech paradigm, but of the Paleolithic one. You can see PowerPoint not working. Beyond the actual causes, you can see the paradox here, because otherwise you stay in the light, you fail to see the shadows. No doubt, in the technological revolution we undertake, I'm sure a microphone will fail, or design software will fail, or something will happen. But this is part of ourselves as well. And philosophy, from its uselessness, between quotation marks, shows that human beings are productive and unproductive as well. There are areas of inexistence that range from uselessness with usefulness, and you should be prepared to open up to those areas. We need to come to terms with our unproductive part as well. And this is something I believe technologies are somehow creating the place for that to happen. The second one I took note was that yesterday I had 2 teeth removed. I got the X-rays, everything, and the end of the extraction was with a hammer. The dentist was just hammering in my open mouth, and this is really Paleolithic times. I swear you, teeth were removed like that 20,000 years ago, even beyond the Paleolithic. And I asked the dentist, isn't there any other technology or possibility? No, it's stuck and that's it. Number 3, the claim by researchers at the CONICET. Again, another paradox. This is the center of science. This is an event that has the support of the Ministry of Culture, of Science, of the state, and at the same time there's a conflict at the heart of the state because of a political decision to uninvest the public research work. And this is paradoxical. You cannot invisibilize it, then you take sides. Unfortunately, we do take sides. And there's a case making the headlines already for the last 49 days, and this is the case of Santiago Maldonado. Don't you think that this is unbelievable for the current development state of technology, where the Ministry of Security, the border police has so much technology, and yet they fail to know where a person is? This is a paradox. We're now going to talk about the post-truth, but for starters, one would assume that so many advances in technology would bring you some responses. Then you can hide the responses, you can mask them, whatever, but anyway, it's still unbelievable to see such contrast. And the last one I wanted to mention is that on the way here across Godoy Cruz, on the stairs to the right of this building, there were 3 people sleeping on the street out there, the homeless, exactly at the Cultural Science Center and within the framework of an event on the advances of blah, blah, blah. Nevertheless, 3 homeless people find shelter in the investment made by the state. Well, obviously, yet another paradox. Let's bring paradoxes to this game, because we don't do that all the time. And the problem with philosophy is that if you continue to visualize paradoxes 24/7, you cannot move. But if you don't see even one within a day, you ignore them. In the first case, we do not move forward, and in the second, we get run over. So we need to strike a balance between the two. There is a film from 15 or 20 years ago that with this dialogue. I don't know if you'll recognize it. Two people arrive and encounter some situation of ruins, devastating situation, stones, and ruined in the sense of something that has lost all shape, the absolute lack of shape. This is pathetic, really, and both of them are looking at the situation, and one of them tells the other, "So is this not real?" And the other says, "What is real?" How would you define real if you mean what you can feel, what you can smell, taste, and see? Then the term real is electrical signals construed by your brain. This is the world you know. The world such as it was at the end of the 20th century. Now, it only exists as part of a neural interactive simulation called the Matrix. You have lived in an imaginary world. You have lived. It is not that you will live in an imaginary world. You have lived in an imaginary world, Neo. This is the world as it is nowadays. And then there's an incredible phrase, "Welcome to the desert of reality." Welcome to the desert of reality. We only have some fragments of information, but what we know for sure is that at some point at the beginning of the 21st century, the whole of mankind joined excitement. This is prophetic excitement. This is a buzzword. It was like the oracle. It is interesting to reflect upon what really is. You see that the most challenging worlds, futuristic films, are the ones that were created more than 10 years ago. The films from now are like, well, but the ones from 10 to 15 years ago, remember that Hegel says that philosophy always arrives late because it takes time to accommodate to material transformation. And this is a film that can be seen a bit naively, The Matrix 1, but the second, no way, no room for naivety. The point in which the architect tells Neo that he is also a creation of power, and this is essential to understand where the relationship between the power and the resistance is. If resistance is created by the power, there should be no way out. That is the Matrix 2. Still more room for reflection. This is a film dealing with the conflict between reality and evidence. There's a dichotomy in the Matrix which stumbles here, because what Morpheo is saying. Do you know what Morpheo means in Greek? It's shape, the form. It's like reality is a desert. And one of them quickly says reality is nothing, because very quickly links the idea of desert without of absence. No doubt, following the logic of immediateness, we would say it is not real because there's nothing in the desert, there's only constructions of sense we do on real. For this primary dichotomic scheme of a reality that does not exist and of a construction of meaning we come up with to provide that lack of entity with something. But this dates back from ever. This is not a product of our contemporaneous technology. We could say that virtual reality embodies an ancestral scheme, and literature did so. And it also awakens songs for construction of meaning. At some point, both literature and virtual reality constructions share that confrontation with an absent reality. Now, Nietzsche, over 150 years ago, when coming to this conclusion in a key conclusion called The Dawn of Idols, is that if there is no reality, all constructions or interpretations of that absent reality lack value as well. And Nietzsche says, if the opposite of reality or of truth, let's use them as synonyms for the time being, is appearance, the problem is that if truth has died or reality does not exist, what is appearance? There's a very interesting metaphor that helps us understand the situation that makes the most of this dichotomy. If a mask masks a face, and we come to the conclusion that there is no face because everything is a mask, that is to say, there is no reality because everything is interpretation, the immediate intuitive conclusion is that it does no longer make any sense to talk about masks, because masks are masks to the extent that they had a face. But if there is no face, what is a mask? And that exploits the binary, because there's no longer a distinction between reality and apparent. What is our faces? The various masquerades in which we are submersed in every situation. What makes our faces always shapeless. And which is my face? None. That is to say, all of them. So why do I continue to keep this duality between reality and appearance? And this jumps directly into the post-truth. Why? Because it appeases us, it anesthetizes us, it makes us provided with some order, because there's an anarchy of that permanent indistinction. We are all the time applying pharmacology to this. We are born to die, unbearable. So what do we come up with? We provide life with meaning, because otherwise we need to assume this existential paradox from day number one. And here is the same. We think virtuality, which is somehow our creation, embodying our dichotomy, which has been in crisis forever. Prior to the information technology revolution, one still heard things such as, I dreamed this and this, but this was not the case in reality. So how come what you dreamt is not part of reality? The thing is that if you assume that dreams are part of reality, then there appear to surface some cracks of our order reality. I'm sorry to tell you here that dreams are part of reality, and that we are all the time rendering invisible our dream areas. Do you know how different our identities or post-identities be if we undistinguished those presumed limits and borders? The problem is that we lack the words, the language. there's this type of anxiety to conceptualize new changes, new narratives. But the problem is that reality moves way faster. This is pure Marx. Material transformations go always and arrive always first, and then institutions do as best they can to catch up with the change that run them over. They first attempt to stop it, then rearrange, and then assume whatever it is. But materiality takes always the lead. And our conscience always take time because they are more conservative. They are after this peace of mind. Now we lack words. Why do we talk about post-truth? Because the difference between truth and lies is so much in crisis that we should assume that it makes no longer sense to use those terms in a very taxative way, dichotomically. So what can I say about my statements? That they are somewhat truths? Relative truth is nonsense, because the idea behind truth is that if something is true, it is not relatively true. If I say partially, I would be meaning that I'm weakening that. But in fact, what I'm saying is that the idea of truth does no longer make any sense. So why say relative truth if there's no longer truth in the absolute sense of the word? Why cannot I move from language? That's the main problem of philosophy in the 20th century. Hegel said, how to get away from metaphysics of the order in which we fictionalize reality, which is already changing. And it is changing because it's the desert. Some brackets. I forgot to mention something about the desert. Is it true that there is nothing in desert? We need to magnify it, because what there is in the desert, there is even more than one would assume. Because what you find in the desert has such resistance that you cannot find it anywhere else. So again, it's a matter of fine-tuning our sight. What does the desert tell us about real? Is desert necessarily destructive? You know that Heidegger works with the desert, and he distinguishes destruction from desertification. Destroying something, he says, brings you the possibility of rebuilding, but desertifying it is not only destruction, but making a renaissance impossible. This is really powerful. And Nietzsche is previous, but in some way Nietzsche would seem to answer Heidegger, because you can read backward forwards. And Nietzsche says no. And you note here that Nietzsche says, when Jesus had to find himself, where does he go to? To the shopping mall? No. He goes to the desert, and there not only is the desert full, but everything is there. Who's there? The devil, the one who created God, goes and tempts him. Nietzsche said, desert is the place of freedom. It's the other way around. So the desert, it creates the vertige of understanding that everything could be different. That is one we prefer solid things, because desert accounts for ephemeral strangeness. And I close the brackets, and I'm arriving to my conclusions as well. So what is post-truth, or how does all this link to post-truth? We need to understand here that the post prefix in academia, all the ones referring to post are looked down on as fake. From the postmodern times to our days, this is really looked down on. But I think this prefix is key, not because I am post or against something. This is a different animal. This is key linguistically speaking, because it lets us bring this binary we talked about to an end. Why post-truth? Because we are the child of the post-truth device we cannot do away with for the time being. We know that the truth is dead, but we lack new languages. So the post-truth is a way of saying that post there tells us we need to use the term truth to refer to something that makes no longer sense, but however, as a syntactic device, lets us begin to understand. The truth is a ghost. It is a ghost. The truth is dead. It is dead, but still valid. Nietzsche has a text in which he states, God is dead, but human beings continue to worship his shadows. So God is dead, but you don't know what to do. You need a beacon, so you get hold of its shadows. And Nietzsche goes on to say, there will come the time in which we shall overcome God's shadows. Is the post-truth lying? Technology allows for lying. The media lie. Okay. And when somebody on a tete-a-tete says, what do you think about me? Doesn't the other lie? We expiate our blames and on the media. But this issue with truth and lies exists since amoeba times. This is no matter what, but this is historical, contemporaneous in terms of post-truth. Contemporary shows in the terms of the visualization we talked about. It loses density, but we still do not have the new one. So it embodies our times, the post. But is it really lying? And now I'll leave you an open question. Is the contrary of the truth a lie? I don't think so. The other way around, the one who lies knows the truth. He omits it. It hides it, or it changes it, or manipulates it. But the contrary of the truth is fakeness. And the one who makes a mistake or says something fake believes in what he's saying as if it were the truth. And note the paradox here. The one who lies knows the truth, but the one making a mistake, in fact, is not lying, because lies have not to do with what is being said, but what the use of that is. A lie is not a question of information, but of power. This is ethics or politics, if you want. You lie for a reason, and it has to do with an intention. When there's an intention to lie, that intention is absolutely impossible to discover. You don't know if the other is lying. There is no liometer. You cannot know. The other can say, okay, I made a mistake, I didn't lie. Because this is volitional of the intention of the language, lies cannot be objectivable. This is the use we make of language. And I think post-truth can be best described as a side to lie that is the most problematic of all of them, that is lying to oneself. Self-deceit. Can we lie to ourselves? I don't think so. I think there is always a small open percentage when you know you're lying to yourself, because when you lie, you know you're lying. So when you are lying to yourself, you can pretend up to an extent, because there's a 2% in which you know you're lying to yourselves. And this is to conclude. It is true that reality, as we have been discussing, is fully open to the interpretation we want to make of it. That is to say, there is not a single reality and we are interpreting all the time. Now, that situation gives us two possibilities. Because it is open to interpreting, or I can interpret whatever I want to account for whatever I want, and that is the reaction known in journalism as post-truth. That is to say, reality makes me approach it the way I like it. So I appease my dogma. I interpret what I previously know I need to interpret to have peace of mind. Think of the Maldonado case. I can interpret it the way I like it. And even more so with a missing person case. This is a flagship case of the lack of reality. So I can interpret it as, well, he's in holiday in Chile. The absent reality gives me that possibility, or I can see it the other way around. That is one reaction. And the other reaction, which I consider to be essential, is that because there's no reality and everything is interpretation, why not open up to others' interpretations, which have the strength, the efficiency, and the intention of making me go outside myself and go beyond the limits I promote with my own self. Heidegger said, being free is taking ownership of our own self. Levinas, a philosopher prisoner of concentration camps of a system Heidegger supported, said, no, it is not taking ownership of ourselves, but escaping of ourselves. Thank you very much.